video is going to be about rest and rest. What we're going to do is we're going to put up a Spring Boot server that exposes a REST endpoint, and then when that REST endpoint's called, it's going to call out to a third-party REST API. So let's start with Spring Initializer. Here's Spring Initializer. And the dependency we want is web. That's the one we need to put up for our server to expose a REST endpoint. So let's call it RestTemplate, because we're going to do double rest. And let's save it in temp. Alrighty. Let's go to temp. I already have a restrest directory, so I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, now I'm going to unzip the restrest.zip. Boom. Done with that. Now this time I'm going to bring up IntelliJ, and I'm already going to have a project open, and I'm going to go import this new project. I haven't done that before. I always started with the splash screen for IntelliJ, but this is the way it's normally done, because you normally already have a project open. So my project that I have open is called Sandbox, because I have this little sandbox project that when I want to just mess around with stuff. Now the way I go from this back to the splash screen for IntelliJ, I click on File, Close Project. And that's the way I've always gotten back to the splash screen. But if I'm in a project like this, like the sandbox project, I can click File, New, Project from Existing Sources. And then it's just the same as we've done before. In my temp directory, I should have a rest. I do. And just be careful. Sometimes IntelliJ is won't show it right away. Sometimes if you just unzip it and open IntelliJ, and all you do is like collapse the parent folder and reopen it, and it should find it. So rest. Go find the POM. Oh, see right now, this rest has, it's still cached what I had before, which is bogus. There it is. So I closed it, I reopened it, and now it has the one I just unzipped. So just be careful with IntelliJ that sometimes it's caching directory structures and you need to close and open to see the new stuff. Alright, so then as always, I just say take all the defaults, and I'm going to say show it in this window. Now, just one more thing about IntelliJ. If I click on Windows, I only have one project open. If I open another project, like that sandbox, and I say open it in a new window, now I have two projects open. They each have their own window. And if I click on Windows here, I can see I have Sandbox and RestRest. So I'm going to go and I'm going to close the Sandbox project and only have RestRest. Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to create a controller. And new Java class, I'll call it my controller. And since I'm going to be a REST controller, I'm going to annotate it. REST controller. Okay. And let's put it in an endpoint. Request mapping. We'll just do root. And this is REST. So at the moment, I'm going to return void, but I'm going to change that when we call out to get info All right, so that's just a skeleton. That's not the final product there. All right, so let's talk about REST here for a moment. I have a little user.html with some really simple CSS and JavaScript that when you click on a button, I'm going to go out to this API. I'm going to go out to the GitHub API and say, get me the user and show the user. So the important thing here is this is Ajax. We're going to move this into our REST controller. I just wanted to show you what it does. So okay, here it is. So here's the page. This has nothing to do with Spring. These are just 3 files, an HTML, a CSS, and a JavaScript. So I type in the username, click the button, does some Ajax, comes back, and gives me the public profile for user gprat-tiy. This is what we're going to move into the Spring controller, because instead of just doing Ajax from the browser, we want our server to do it because maybe it'll filter things or whatever. So I have the JSON here. This is the JSON that gets returned by the call to GitHub to get the user. So we're just going to pick out a few fields and we're going to create a Java object out of it. So let's go to our IntelliJ and let's do a new Java class and we'll call it GitHub user. And let's pick out a few attributes from, this is a POJO, plain old Java object, no annotation, no Spring annotations whatsoever. It's just going to be, I think of it as a data object. All right, how about, what do we have here? We have events user, email created at company. How about company? Created an email following hireable. How about HTML-UR? And we'll pick one, and name. Let's do name as well. Now for JSON to work, when I say this is a POJO, this is a Java bean. Empty constructor and getters and setters. So by default it has an empty constructor that we don't see. Now I'm going to code generate. Where are you? Generate. There it is. Generate. And I'm going to generate getters and setters. And I'm going to choose all 3. Boom. We have us a Java bean. All right, done with that. So back to my controller. My controller is going to return the GitHub user. All right. Now we need to make a REST. Oh, whoops! Almost made a big mistake here. We need to do this little piece of magic on the Java bean. That little JSON ignore properties says, hey, if there's properties in the JSON that aren't in this Java object, that's okay, ignore them, and vice versa. So this is very important, and it'll just look into the JSON and only look for company HTML_URL and name, and that's the only ones. And there's going to be others, but it's not going to say that's a problem. Alrighty, so now what we want to do is, for this, I'm going to call the RestTemplate, and I'm going to map the URL. Well, let's just do it. Here's the URL. GitHub URL is going to be the GitHub API. And now we're going to call that. Let's create a REST template. We got one. And let's just return. And let's do RestTemplate. What is it? Get for object. Can't remember. I'm going to have to go look it up. It's get for object. Get, not get. Get for object. The URL, which is our GitHub URL. And we're going to say map it to the GitHub user class. Boom. That's all we got to do. That's it. 2 lines of code. We could even make it 1 line of code if we wanted to, but let's talk about these 2 lines of code. First one is we new up a REST template, and then we call get for object. We give it the URL, and we tell it what class to map it to. Let's run this. Remember, right now I cannot see my project window. In this little square in the bottom left of IntelliJ here, if you hover over it, it'll give you a list of windows, and I'm going to choose project. Yes. And this is the main, right? It has the main, and I'm going to run that. And I'm getting text messages about my 12-year-old riding bikes. All right, there's the spring splash screen. So right now this is just a pass through. I'm going to call my endpoint. It's going to call the GitHub, and it's going to return me. The difference is that I'm only going to get the 3 fields that I put in my Pojo, in my Java bean. So let's bring this up. Let's go hit localhost. Come on, localhost. There it is. But I hit. So you can see that only company, HTML, URL, and name come back because that's what I set my Java bean to, and those are the only JSON fields that we cared about. And that, my friends, is our REST controller, our Spring Boot server exposing a REST endpoint, calling another REST endpoint. And that calling that other REST endpoint is done by the REST template get for object.